Mr. Ngasana was doing a great job at the NPA. So I just, till to date, didn't understand the real issues, why Mr. Ngasana had to leave the NPA. That is why I asked those questions, because I didn't want to commit, if I'd taken the post, to commit the same mistakes that they'd done. And when I asked why me, the president said he believes that I have what it takes to stabilize the NPA, which was in turmoil. It has always been in turmoil for the longest period, we all know. And then I then asked him the question I asked in terms of what would happen if I were to charge him for criminal offenses, because even at that time, I think it was in the air that the president has committed a number of criminal offenses. And if I remember well, the DA for the longest period kept on trying to reinstate the charges which the former president, ought to have faced. So I needed to understand that in the event that that happens, what would happen if I had to charge him? So I wanted to get his view.
Yes, and one of the questions that you put to the former president was the wrongs, or rather, what wrongs did Mr. Ngasana commit? What was the former president's answer to that?
Well, maybe just to read, Chair, the whole...
well, if you can just give your evidence without reading, that would be better. But if you need to refresh your memory,
yeah.
Feel free.
On the wrongs of Mr. Ngasana, the former president said to me, why did Mr. Ngasana charge Ms. Nomqobo Chiba? That was... Okay,
you tend to lower your voice. So keep on trying to...
Apologies, yeah. Chair.
Okay.
Yeah, on that one, the former president said to me he was unhappy that Mr. Ngasana decided to charge Ms. Nomqobo Chiba. Chairperson, you'll recall that Mr. Ngasana at some point profiled criminal charges against Ms. Nomqobo Chiba. I cannot remember what was the basis of those criminal charges, but he did. And the president was unhappy about that.
And then continue, tell us more about that, about your exchange with the former president.
And at that point, Chairperson,
yes,
what went on in my mind, I then felt that the former president wanted to appoint me as the de jure director of NPA, but Ms. Nomqobo Chiba as the de facto director of the NPA. The message that I understood was, I'm appointing you as long as you don't touch Nomqobo Chiba.
Yeah.
That was my understanding.
Yes.
Which I was uncomfortable with.
Yes.
And by some luck, Chairperson, in my work as a member of the reference group, I also penned an opinion, just to give the background, on SABC,
Yes.
especially on the former Commissioner of SABC, Ms. Ria Piecha. In one of my recommendations there was that Ms. Piecha failed at SABC, amongst other things, because she was not one of them. She was never a cop. She's a social worker. And I'd also worked at the Department of Correctional Services, where Mr. Moyane was the commissioner. Officers at the Department of Correctional Services also didn't want to salute Mr. Tom Moyane because he was not one of them. So it is generally a known phenomenon that in the criminal justice system, if you are not from within, they rarely would support you. You've got to come from. And so I reminded the former president about what I penned on Ms. Piecha and the fact that I was a DCS at the same time as Mr. Moyane was the commissioner there. It somehow resonated with him in that I was basically also saying, much as you have confidence in me, I was never a prosecutor. They might not, the NPA is part of the criminal justice system. They might not respect me. They might not salute me. And he also concurred in that there was another stream of thought which he was consulting with, which told him that it's better to appoint someone from within. And our minds met at that point. And we agreed on that one, that it may not be a good thing for me to be the director of the NPA. Chair, in reality, I was subtly escaping from bluntly telling the former president that if I'm to be appointed as the director of the NPA, I wouldn't want any interference in whatever form, and I would want to be the director of the NPA and not someone else who is favored by him. And so I was not going to accept the post because of what he told me about the reasons for getting rid of Mr. Ngasana.
You say you were never a prosecutor, is that correct?
Yes.
Never in your life?
Yes, I was never a prosecutor.
Are you, at the moment, have you, for a long time, simply been with the SAPS or what?
I've never, the criminal justice department that I worked for was the Department of Correctional Services, and now as Chief Governance Officer of the Special Investigating Unit.
So professionally, how could one categorize you? What's your background?
Professionally, I am a bureaucrat.
Yeah.
Yes, because I've always been in government.
Yes.
Yes.
But you worked at correctional services, is that right?
I worked at correctional services.
And where else?
I worked at DMR. I was the advisor of
Minister Ramatlodi.
Minister Ramatlodi, former Minister Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, when she was at DMR, and Ms. Susan Shabangu at DMR. Then it was called Department of Mineral and Energy. With Minister Ramatlori, it was my second stint there.
Yeah.
And I was the head of the MEC's office in Gauteng, Department of Social Development, and I also worked in the Executive Mayor's office of Ekurhuleni municipality. So I've basically, chairperson, worked in all the different tiers of government, from local, provincial to national.
But you have legal qualifications?
Yes.
Okay, what are your legal qualifications?
I'm an advocate.
In terms of degrees?
LLB.
You have got LLB?
Yes.
And when did you acquire your LLB?
2010.
2010.
Yes.
So this was 2015 when you had this meeting with the former president.
Yes.
So you had a legal qualification, LLB, for about 5 years or so.
Yes, but I have been studying it. I've worked in legal firms for a very long time. Before then, I worked for Shan Chetty attorneys, Priscilla Jana attorneys in the past.
But not as an attorney?
Not, yes.
Yeah.
Not as an attorney, yes, yeah.
And when were you admitted as an advocate?
2011.
2011.
Yes.
So at the time that the former president had a meeting with you and indicated that he wanted to appoint you as the head of the NPA, you had the LLB degree, you had had it for about 5 years or so.
Yes.
You had never practiced as an attorney. You had never practiced, you have never been a prosecutor.
Yes.
You had been admitted as an advocate in 2011.
Yes.
But had you practiced as an advocate at all after admission?
Not on full-time basis.
Yes.
Part-time, yes.
Yeah. But between 2011 and 2015, when you say practice part-time, does that mean that while you may have been in whatever other job you were doing some cases on the side?
Yes, legal work, yes, yeah. I was doing
legal work.
Yes, yeah.
Involving going to court or not really involving going to court?
Not so often.
Yes.
Drafting contracts and other commercial issues, yes.
Yes. So I would have imagined that you surely should have been quite shocked that he was thinking of appointing you to such a position to be in charge of all the prosecutors in the whole country with lots of experience when you have never been a prosecutor, you had never practiced as an attorney, you had had an LLB, a law degree only about 5 years, and you had only practiced part-time as an advocate, just a little bit, and yet he wanted you to be at the head of the NPA. Was it not really a shock for you?
Chair, it was, because criminal law generally has also not been my interest. It was, but the former president explained that I think by virtue of being an experienced bureaucrat, he needed a manager who will stabilize the NPA with a legal background. I think that was his thinking.
Yes, you may continue.
Thank you, Chair. Moving on to paragraph 11, where you set out certain events relating to the Department of Mineral Resources. In paragraph 11.1, you reiterate the refusal to meet the Guptas as well as the refusal to bow to pressure, which Mr. Brian Molefe and Dr. Ben Gubane wanted to exert on the former DMR Minister Ramatlhodi. And this you've testified to through earlier paragraphs. You then state that your quest to regulate, the mining industry in a just manner affected some mines' bottom line adversely. What did you mean by that?
What I mean by that is that former Minister Ramatlhodi wanted things to be done by the book, and some mines disregarded laws governing the industry. They would flout some rules with impunity. And former Minister Ramatlhodi then said to us as officials that where the act is flouted, punitive measures must be taken against those who do so. There was one company, it was Optimum Mine, which by that time it was a subsidiary of Glencore Global Resources, which flouted section 931B of the MPRDA. And this section, Chairperson, talks to mine health and safety in mines. And Minister Ramatlhodi used to be affected by the deaths which occurred in mines because of not adhering to this section. And Optimum Mine Company flouted this section, and the directive was that their license should be suspended up until such time that they come with a plan to show how they're going to comply with this mine, because lives of mine workers were important. The suspension of that license, and I think which went on for about a week or so, affected their bottom line in a big way. And during that period, the bosses, of the company sought to try and get us to lift the license without them having complied with that. And former Minister Ramatlhodi would say no, and indeed we didn't, up until such time that they complied. And they were not happy about it.
And in paragraph 11.4, you state that your action, our action rather, legally correct as it was, irked some people. Can you specify which people you're referring to?
Well, that's just what I've said, that the mine bosses were not too happy about the fact that we suspending a license for a mine house, even for a day, affects them in a big way. So they were irked by what we've done.
Yes. In paragraph 12, you then deal with issues relating to the DPSA, which you've earlier stated in your statement to be the Department of Public Service Administration.
Before you proceed onto that topic, can I go back to your meeting with the former president? So you say that your response to him when he said he wanted to appoint you as the director of the NPA, you said you told him about an opinion that you had given previously relating to the then National Commissioner of Police, Ms. Ria Piecha, in which you had said that she had failed because she did not come from within the police, within the ranks of the police. Is that right?
Yes, amongst other things.
Yeah, among other things. And you also say you said to him the same had happened with Mr. Tom Moyane when he was National Commissioner of Correctional Services. You said he had not come from within the ranks of correctional services, and therefore some of the officials at correctional services did not want to salute him. He was not being accepted fully.
Yes.
So in other words, you were in effect saying, that's what will happen to me as well if you appoint me as head of the NPA.
Yes.
Because I would not be coming from within the ranks. I've never been a prosecutor.
Yes.
Now, you did ask, you did say you asked him why you. Now that you have told me that you have never been a prosecutor, you had acquired your LLB degree in 2010, and blah, 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 I'm interested to know what he advanced as the basis for him saying he thought you had what it would take to stabilize the NPA.
Chair, he basically said that the NPA is in turmoil administratively, not necessarily in terms of prosecutors executing their duties in courts. I think we know they do that on a daily basis. But even as of now, we know that at management level, there had been a lot of problems at the NPA, and I think the former president thought that with my managerial skills, I would probably be in a position to stabilize the management of the NPA.
Yeah, I understand that, but what I want is what his basis was for thinking that of all the people you would have what it would take, whether he articulated that or not.
I wouldn't know,
You wouldn't
Chairperson,
know.
what his basis for approaching me was. No.
And you had never been asked for his CV to be sent to either him or to Minister Ntlego to say maybe it's what he saw in your CV?
No, the CV they had.
They had the CV?
Yes, that process ran at the same time with the CV and everything else.
Okay.
Yes.
Had you been, did you have a lot of managerial experience within government?
Yes, I've been in government for a very long time.
But I'm now talking more in terms of being a leader.
Yes, I've been
being a manager.
Yes, I've been in.
What positions had you held?
In fact,
of leadership management.
When I joined government at senior management level throughout my life.
Senior management
level throughout my period in government. Yes.
Yes. Well, when you leave it at simply saying senior management level, it doesn't tell me much. Were you Director General? Were you Deputy Director General? Were you Chief Director?
Chief Director and acting DDG. Mm-hmm. And as a special advisor to the minister. I was always at the DG level.
Yes. So, so in terms of a permanent position within government, within a government department, at a permanent level, the position you would have held would have been a chief director.
Starting from senior management level in government, we'll start at the director, chief director, DDG, and DG.
And acting DG or acting DG?
I acted as acting DDG when I was acting head of department at social development in Gauteng. And when I advised ministers, Minister Ramatlhodi, I advised him at the DG level.
Yeah, okay, all right. No, that's fine. And DDG was which department?
That's when HODs in the province. I at a DDG level.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
and so which, was it Limpopo province? Which province were you?
No, Chairperson, I'm from Soweto.
Yeah?
I'm from Soweto, I'm not from Limpopo.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I apologize. I think it's because when you told me about your surname, you said it's a vendor surname.
Yes. Yeah. No, I'm from Soweto.
Okay. Okay. No, I just want to get particulars. So you were DDG in Gauteng, in one of the provincial departments in Gauteng.
Acting HOD, which is at a DDG level.
Oh, okay,
yes,
okay.
Yes.
No, thank you. I just wanted to get a full picture. But then there is one aspect which I want you to confirm. In your statement, you said that the former president said Mr. Ngasana charged Ms. Jiba unnecessarily. Because I think when you gave evidence, you were not necessarily looking at the statement.
Yeah.
I just want to confirm whether that's what he said.
Yes, that's what he told me.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Going back to paragraph 12 on page 49 of your statement, you then set out events relating to another reshuffle. Can you please take the Chair through that?
Chairperson, on Tuesday, 22nd September 2015, former President Mr. Zuma reshuffled cabinet and moved former Minister Ramatlhodi from DMR to DPSA. Former Minister Ramatlhodi, once at DPSA, restarted the process of reviewing the ministerial handbook. Former Minister Ramatlhodi drastically altered the manner in which public servants, in particular, used to be employed to senior positions in government. Some who were appointed were often ill-qualified for senior positions before he altered the directive. Former Minister Ramatlhodi came up with a stringent employment directive which stipulated requirements needed especially for senior positions in government, e.g. DGs and DDGs.
You then move on to the DMR, or as you've titled it, DMR.
Okay, so that's the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture. We seem to be having a little challenge with the audio feed that's coming through there from the Commission of Inquiry, but it appears to be fixed. Let's try and go back and listen in again.
Who had resigned?
Yeah, just to put this in context, former Minister Ramatlhodi explained this phenomenon. The Minister of DPSA processes the appointments to cabinet of DDGs and DGs. different departments, ministers in different departments will advertise posts for DGs, DDGs. They'll shortlist, interview candidates. But they have to, after doing those processes, they've got to submit their submissions to the Minister of Public Service and Administration to process to Cabinet, because DDGs and DGs are Cabinet appointments. Now, the Minister of DPSA is not simply a conduit to say submissions have come through. He is duty-bound to look at whether processes were properly followed by Department X or so in recommending candidate X, Y to be a DG or a DDG. Now, if the Minister of DPSA, if he finds out that the person Minister X wants to appoint as a DDG or DG does not meet the requirement of the post, the Minister of DPSA rejects that submission. So in other words, the person, it's as good as saying you'll get a regret letter that you are unsuccessful in applying for the post. So I bring in a DMR here in the sense that in paragraph 13.1, page 49, Dr. Tibedi Ramoncha, a distinguished scientist who was the Director General, DMR, resigned. The chairperson, when former Minister Ramatodi was here, wanted to find out specifically what his qualifications were. He was a doctor of geology. He has been the CEO of Council for Geoscience. He has been in that space for a very long, long time. And he's a distinguished scientist. He's a professor of geology now at WITS.
So you did say that, or maybe Mr. Ramatloti might have been the one who said this, that you were at DMR even before Minister Ramatloti was appointed Minister of DMR. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, I worked for, then it was not called DMR, it was called Department of Mineral Resources.
Yes.
And yeah, when former Minister Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka
Raise your voice, raise your voice.
Oh, when former Minister Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka was the minister.
Yes.
At that time, yes, I was.
So how you were at the department that was ultimately called DMR. You were there from when to when?
With Minister Ramatloti, we started...
With all the ministers that you went through, just I want to know how long your span there was.
My first stint, I cannot remember how long I was at the DMR at that time. I cannot remember how long it took. Because I then moved from that department to go and head the MEC's office in Gauteng of social development. Thereafter, I left and went to Ekurhuleni and worked in the executive mayor's office.
Yeah, but were you advisor to Minister Shabangu as well?
Yes, Minister Shabangu was the deputy minister of former Minister Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka.
Oh, okay.
Deputy ministers do not have the right to appoint special advisors. It's only ministers who can.
Oh, okay.
But once you're appointed, you advise the minister.
Both, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So, so during, well, Ms. Mlambo-Ngcuka would have been there up to 2008. I would imagine, because if I recall correctly, she did
Yes,
not
yes,
come
yes,
back
yes,
after
yeah.
President Beggy
Yes,
resigned.
yes, yes.
But you continued until you had to come to the Gauteng department that you talked about.
Yes, until I came to Gauteng Department of Social Development, after which I left for Ekurhuleni municipality.
Oh, and
Yes.
and then when did you go back to
The
what
national-
is essentially DMR before Ramatloti?
No, I went when former Minister Ramatloti was appointed as Deputy Minister of the Department of Correctional Services.
Yeah.
He requested me to come and join him at DCS. So I was with former Minister Ramatloti when he was a Deputy Minister DCS. So in 2014, when former State President appointed him as Minister of DMR, I moved with him to DMR. Yes.
It's just that I think he may have been mistaken. I think when he gave evidence, I thought he said he found you at DMR.
He probably meant that I'd worked at DMR before he became the minister there. I think that's what he was saying.
Yeah, okay. Well, maybe I ask you this question because I've asked you about during the time of Ms. Shabangu, but you said Ms. Shabangu wasn't minister. She was deputy minister.
At the time.
So at the time.
Yes.
Do you know anything about mining indabas that were held in Cape Town by the department at any stage prior to Minister Ramatloti's time?
Yes, I attended.
You attended some of them?
Yes, yeah.
How did they come about? Can you just tell me a little bit about them? I understand from Minister Ramatloti's evidence that there would be a mining indaba that would take place at whatever venue in Cape Town, but in the evening or in the afternoon, the people who were attending, or some people were attending the mining indaba, would be invited to a Gupta house where there would be another gathering, and the department would be, I want to say invited, but I don't know whether you might say directed to attend.
It has always been the tradition, Chair, of the mining indaba that the mining indaba would run for the whole week in Cape Town. It has always been held in Cape Town, and there'll be different sessions. It was a real platform for marketing.
So it was not a one-day affair?
It was not a one-day affair. It's an event. It's in fact, it's an annual event. It has been taking place almost annually, all the time.
Yes.
During the day, there'll be various speakers talking about different topics in the mining space. And because many people came from all over the world, and in the country as well, in the sector, in the evening, different people would organize their own functions, networking functions. For example, a big firm like Edward Nathan would invite people to their offices and dine them, and another firm, Weber Wenzel, I'm just talking about legal ones, that we know, or sometimes it would be a firm of an auditing firm. So it was not uncommon that there'd be various activities where people would be invited for dinners there.
So what you are saying is that there may have been, or there were, instances where the Gupta family might have invited some people attending the mining indaba to their own residence, but they were not the only ones. There were other groupings, including maybe auditing firms and other people who would invite people attending the mining indaba to come to their offices or whatever venue for purposes of networking.
Yes, put simply, Chairperson, when there is a derby at FNB, there are suits there.
Yeah.
Different companies would invite their customers to wine and dine them there during the game. So the mining indaba was such a platform where companies would also, as a way of interacting with everybody else, they'll choose who they want to invite to go and maybe have dinner with. Yes.
So the officials of the department, including minister and deputy minister, as far as you know, they would go to different places where they may be invited, or which may have included invitations to the Gupta function, or would the position be that they more often than not just went to the Gupta one?
Usually officials of the department are technocrats, just to say that the events, even though they were not really directly involved in managing the event, because there was an events company staging, there's an events company which stages the mining indaba. People who would be invited to these meetings would be senior company executives and politicians, because with the mining indaba, not only is it attended by the minister and deputy minister of DMR, even other ministers attend. So, so they'll be invited to different places to go and interact with people.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Bliffen.
Thank you, Chair. The next aspect that you deal with in paragraph 13.4 of your statement relates to a submission received from former DMR Minister Zwane. Can you tell us about the submission and what it related to?
Yes, as I stated, Chairperson, that ministers in different departments will advertise posts, and DDGs and DGs, cabinet-approved posts. During our period at DPSA with former Minister Ramatlhodi, a submission from former DMR Minister Zwane was brought in 2016 to process the appointment of Mr. Mzwanele Manyi as DG DMR. Former Minister Ramatlhodi, on perusing the advert and Mr. Mzwanele Manyi's curriculum vitae, concluded that the panel of ministers who interviewed Mr. Mzwanele Manyi erred in proposing that Mr. Mzwanele Manyi be appointed as DG DMR because Mr. Mzwanele Manyi did not possess the qualifications which were stipulated in the advert for the post. The former minister thus rejected the submission.
When the submission was made by Mr. Msebenzi Zwane, what position did Mr. Msebenzi Zwane hold?
What
position did Mr. Msebenzi Zwane hold?
Mr. Msebenzi Zwane replaced former Minister Ramatlhodi when former State President reshuffled former minister from DMR to DPSA. Mr. Zwane became the minister of DMR.
And this submission that he made, can I take you to page 29 to 30 of the bundle?
page 29.
Yes.
Page 29.
Page 29, yes.
Yes.
Can you tell the chair what that document is?
This was a letter penned by former Minister Zwane to former Minister Ramatodi, where he was telling former Minister Ramatodi about the filling of the vacant post of Director General. Mineral
Your
Resources.
voice has gone down again.
Apologies, Chairperson. This letter came from former Minister Zwane, who was the Minister of DMR at the time, addressed to former Minister Ramatodi, who was the Minister of DPSA, and it related to the filling of the vacant post of Director General, Mineral Resources, Department of Mineral Resources.
Yes, and can I take you then to page 27 to 28?
Page?
27 to 28. In his evidence, Advocate Ramatlhodi stated that that was his reply to Minister Mosebenzi Zwane, or then Minister Mosebenzi Zwane. Are you aware of the contents of this letter?
Yes, I am aware of the content of this letter.
Could you briefly paraphrase what the letter states?
Former Minister Ramatodi.
Well, I'm sorry, Ms. Smith, I don't know whether you really need to do that because we do know what the letter says. Minister Ramatodi told us, and we do know that the witness has already indicated what the reason was why Mr. Manyi was not appointed, because I guess that's your main issue.
Certainly, Chair. Thank you. Can I then take you back to your statement, Advocate Mope? We were at page 50 of your statement.
Page 50.
You set out in your statement the reasons why Mr. Paragraph 13.5 on page 50.
Yes.
You set out the reasons why Mr. Mzwanele Manyi failed to make it as the DG. Can you state those reasons?
Mr. Mzwanele Manyi failed to make it as the DG simply because he did not have the qualifications needed for the post.
Yes, and did you, moving on to page 51, was there any response or reaction by Mr. Manyi to his not being appointed as the DG?
Yes. Mr. Mzwanele Manyi called me soon after he was informed, probably by former Minister Zwane, that former Minister Ramatodi rejected his application. So Mr. Mzwanele Manyi called me, one, because I'm the special advisor to former Minister Ramatodi. Two, we know each other too well with Mzwanele Manyi. And he called me, it was in 2016, on a Saturday, and he said he wanted to see me urgently. I then told him that I would not be able to see him because at that period, my wife was suffering from lung cancer stage 4. She was in hospital, basically, the last days of her life. So I then told him that, no, I am in hospital. I'm at Olivedale Hospital. It won't be possible for us to meet. He didn't seem to appreciate my vulnerable status at that time. He then said, no, he has something very, very urgent to tell me, and he won't take time. And then because we know each other, and not so much that he insisted, but we know each other, and I told him my position, and when he said he's got something very urgent to tell me, I told him that, well, I am at the hospital. You can come, you'll meet me at the hospital. And indeed, he came at Olivedale Hospital. We met there. And at the hospital, he told me that former State President Zuma was terribly unhappy about me and former Minister Ramatlhodi because we did not process his appointment to cabinet. He, according to him, was the most suitable person to be DG of DMR. And so he basically wanted to say the former president wanted that decision reversed. And because I'm the special advisor to Advocate Ramatlhodi, I should say to it that that decision of former Minister Ramatlhodi is rescinded, and we process the appointment, his appointment as DG of DMR. I told him that the reason why he was not appointed was simply because he didn't meet the requirements needed for the post. And Minister Ramatlhodi had no other reason not to appoint him, but for the fact that he was not suitably qualified for the post. He left. But he expressed that the president is extremely disappointed by that act.
So, do you remember what Mr. Manyi's qualifications were? Because it may be that I'm sure they were addressed in the correspondence that was sent to.
Yes, the adverts, Chairperson, for DGs in the 2016 directive authored by former Minister Ramatlhodi, whilst he was Minister DPSA, seek to ensure that people get appointed with necessary qualifications for posts. So the advert for Director General, for example, would have said a B degree plus a post qualifications, and Mr. Manya didn't possess a junior degree or even a senior degree at the time.
What qualification, academic qualification, did he have at the time, as you remember?
If I recall, he had a diploma in geology. That's what I can remember.
Yes.
And some certificate from Harvard. I cannot remember what was it all about. But clearly, he did not meet the requirements for the post of DG.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Now, from your interaction with Mr. Manyi, and Mr. Mangi having stated the perturbance of the former president, were you of the view that Mr. Mangi himself expected to have been appointed?
Yes, he actually told me that he is the best candidate to advance the cause of economic transformation of the mining sector as DG of that department. But besides, he was an experienced DG according to him, because before that directive, he was the DG of Labor, the DG of GCIS, before the commencement of the 2016 directive. So he was basically making a case that that matter be revisited. That also, Chairperson, took me aback in the sense that it is a bit unheard of and uncommon for a candidate for any post to go and impress upon a minister. Indirectly, he was really speaking to the former minister of DPSA through me, that this decision has got to be reversed. And which, if it were to be done, it would have compromised the whole process. Because what about the other candidates who did not have the power which he had because of his proximity to the president? Because when he came to me, the agency of him having to meet me, even in the state in which I was, emanated from the fact that he needed to tell me that the former president was perturbed by me, and I guess me as the special advisor. There is the notion that whatever ministers do, they do on the advice of special advisors. But in this instance, even if one was not an advisor, because the directives are published, you know, it's basically looking at the directive. Anybody, you didn't have to be a special advisor. You know the directive, this is what the directive is saying, this is what the advert is saying. If the applicant does not meet the requirements as per the directive and the advert, you don't appoint.
So you parted on what basis with him?
Well, I told him that there's no ways in which this was going to be done, but he emphasized that I should know that the president still won't be happy if... That the president,
he said you should know that the president will not be happy.
Yeah, in the sense that he was trying to convey this message, which was so urgent, according to him. Subjectively so, I think, because he clearly didn't meet the requirements. But I think the agency of it was that the president wanted him to be the DG of DMR. And if someone who's invited by the president to serve in his cabinet is being told to reverse what he has done, and still he sticks to his guns, you know, that person must know that there may be some trouble looming ahead. But we are friends with Jimmy, so we still parted, you know, on that friendly note. We still remain friends, even up to now, whenever we meet.
I understand you to be saying, you are not saying that he said to you that there would be trouble, but I understand you to be saying the tone and basis of your parting on that occasion left you with was that you felt, well, arising out of us, that is you and Minister Ramatloti, insisting that we are not changing this position, there may be trouble. It was your own thinking.
It was my own thinking, Chair, and probably if tested objectively, I'm sure would still come to my thinking, in the sense that the agency of the meeting was, according to him, not so much his own, but it was from the president, who needed that issue to be corrected there and then. So he then decided, because of the agents of that matter, to come and see me, even when I told him that I was in hospital, on something which was more critical for me, life, someone who's at stage 4 of any cancer. But if weighing the two, the agency was still more important than the life that was basically ebbing away in a hospital, it meant that if you do not correct this thing, that's the only interpretation I think objectively would get to, that if you do not correct this mistake, trouble may come your way.
So would it be fair for somebody to say that visit by him to you was meant to put pressure on you and Minister Ramatloti to change the decision? Or would you say it was simply to try and persuade you to change the decision?
Chair, I can equate it to the letter which directed us initially to go to Second World for dinner, and the telephone call. It was an agent meeting, and a meeting which meant to tell me that the former president is unhappy about the decision former minister taken. And the only way to atone for that mistake, so to speak, done by former Minister Ramatloti, of sticking to the law, had to be corrected to do something wrong, to appoint him or process his appointment to cabinet, albeit him not fitting the bill. So the meeting was meant to direct me and indirectly former Minister Ramatloti,
Yes.
to correct that mistake.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there will be troubles.
There could be trouble.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And did the former president, Mr. Jacob Zuma, speak to you about the appointment issue?
The former?
The former president, Mr. Jacob Zuma, did he speak to you about the same appointment issue? Did he ever have any interaction with you regarding the appointment issue?
Of Mr. Manyi?
Of Mr. Manyi, yes.
No, the only interaction I had with the former president was when he wanted to appoint me as the director of NPA. But on this one, it was Mr. Manyi telling me what the feelings of the former state president were in relation to his non-appointment as DG of the Department of Mineral Resources.
Yes, and do you know whether the former president ever spoke to Advocate Ramatloti about the same appointment issue?
Former Minister Ramatloti didn't tell me if the former president directly spoke with him about it. He didn't tell me about that one.
Thank you. In paragraph 14 of your statement, you then move to issues relating to Mr. Themba Maseko and the retired former directors generals, rather. You speak of complaints that were raised by them. Can you explain what the cause of the complaints were?
Chairperson, Mr. Themba Maseko appeared before this commission and stated that as former DGs, their attempts to meet with former Minister Ramatlhodi as Minister of DPSA were futile, and they wanted to meet with him because they really wanted to tell former Minister Ramatlhodi to rein the former state president. Their letter came to me, still as a special advisor, Chairperson, and the former DGs and I we know it, I know most of them, including Themba Maseko. When that letter landed on my desk, I realized that they were really forum shopping out of their frustrations, because I think they'd gone to Luthuli House, they'd gone almost everywhere, especially Themba Maseko, wanting to right the wrongs, which Themba Maseko spoke to when he appeared before this commission. So I think they were basically trying any other avenue, perhaps, which could work in their view to try and get the president's attention, that the former president's attention that what he was doing was, short of saying mismanaging the country, wrong. Upon my perusal of that letter, which was signed by all former DGs, I felt that there was nothing that former Minister Ramatlhodi could do. And I told some of them telephonically that there is no point in expecting former Minister Ramatlhodi to rein in the former state president. Mr. Ramatlhodi serves at the behest of the president. In fact, Mr. Ramatlhodi himself is a subject of irrational reshuffles by the state president. I cannot see any minister basically reining the president. I mean, that can only be done by his political party because it deploys him to government anyway. So there was no purpose, in my view, for us, former Minister Ramatlhodi and I, to meet the DGs, much as we understood the problems. And so that was the position. And I was happy when I heard the chairperson of this commission making a clarion call to DGs in general to volunteer themselves to come and appear before this commission. Because if DGs indeed appear before this commission, DGs, former DGs and current, especially those whose departments were by and large affected by interference from the executive, they would shed more light in showing this commission how cracks come about in governance, in government. And if that were to happen, if DGs, former and current, appear before this commission, this commission will extract much value from their participation. So much so, Chairperson, that if they do come, there may even be a need for the country to look at how to manage the relations between the executive and the accounting officers. Accounting officers meaning DGs, HODs of department, municipal managers, executive meaning MECs, mayors, ministers, and presidents for that matter, because the balance of that scale is nowhere near being equal. Accounting officers, in some instances, work under immense pressure to do wrong things. There are very few accounting officers who would be as strong as Themba Maseko. And I remember one former DG of Gauteng, DG Malele Peche, who opted to resign instead of doing wrong things.
What's his or her name?
Malele Peche. He was the DG of Gauteng.
Yes.
I think during former Premier of Gauteng's time, Ms. Nomvula Mkonyane, he opted to resign. Themba Maseko couldn't also continue doing or executing instructions which were in conflict with the law in the PFMA. But that cannot be said for everybody, and not because people want to do wrong things. There are other considerations. You know, people have families and children to support. You then get to a stage where you have to weigh, do I take my jacket and walk away? What about my bond? What about my children at school? So there may be a need to do that introspection in terms of balancing those scales so that executives, executing authorities know what their duties are vis-à-vis duties expected from accounting officers in terms of the Constitution, the PFMA, and all other policies. If we get that right from a governance point of view, we should be able to correct many of the ills that we face. Because at that level, we cannot as a country account why a department will collapse to almost 0 cent when that department is fully staffed by DGs, DDGs, everybody. There must be other reasons which, if looked into, we may get to a situation where we realize that there may have been some undue influence to do things incorrectly. And the DGs or HODs or city managers in municipalities cannot resist, because if they do, it means losing their jobs. Same applies to CFOs of these departments. CFOs, if they do their job diligently, there's no reason why we should be complaining and seeing massive sieves of flows of money, going out of the system, when we've got all the legal instruments to ensure that every cent can be accounted for.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And earlier you mentioned irrational reshufflings by the former president, and in fact that is also what you mentioned in paragraph 14.7 of your statement. Now, it might be argued that the reshuffling of cabinet is the prerogative of a president. Do you have any comment on that, given what you've said in your statement?
Paragraph?
14.7.
Where I'm saying former Minister Ramatlhodi himself was a victim of former president's irrational reshuffling.
Yes.
And what is your question?
My question is, it might be argued that the reshuffling of cabinet falls within the prerogative of a president. Now, do you have any comment in light of what you've stated about irrational reshufflings, as I quote you in paragraph 14.7?
Chairperson, we all accept that it is the prerogative of any state president to invite and or disinvite members to serve in his or her
To appoint
cabinet.
or disappoint.
Yes, yeah, to do all those things. But I think we must also be guided by our supreme law, the Constitution, which says anything inconsistent, any decision inconsistent with the prescripts of our Constitution is unlawful. So even if the president has that prerogative is not supposed to be absolute, even to a point of bringing the country down. So that is how I look at this thing. It makes sense, in my view, that the president, it has been done. I'm sure we're getting into our fifth administration of our democracy. The past presidents invited ministers into their cabinet, and relatively there was some stability. But we got to a situation now in this current, of course, before the new president now, with the new dawn, came into the picture. I would imagine at any given time, as South Africans, we were now accustomed to a situation where sometimes at 11 or 12, close to 12 midnight, we would hear that so-and-so has been reshuffled. As my former boss stated here, that he didn't know in the morning when he went to bed that he's no longer a minister of DPSA, for example. He was told by his wife the following day in the morning because she saw that on TV that there was a new minister. Now, with due respect, Chairperson, even if it is the President's prerogative to do so, it's important to respect the rights of those you invite and decide at some point to release from your cabinet, to do so following what we should call a rational test. Because if that is done willy-nilly, we run the risk of running our country down.
And moving on to paragraph 15 and 16, being the last paragraphs of your statement, as I have your correction, you have changed dismisses to releases, where you speak of the former state president, Mr. Jacob Zuma, releasing former Minister Ramatlhodi. Once more, you speak of anticipation of this release. Can you explain why this is so?
I speak of?
Anticipation, that appears at paragraph 15.2
yes.
of your statement.
Yes, this is basically what I am saying, Chairperson, that once we get to a plane where a rationality test is thrown out of the window by the person who has the right to appoint and disappoint, as chairperson say. Once you do something right in terms of the law, and even if what you are doing is in terms of the law, if the person who invited you to be in his cabinet, if that person wants a different outcome, which is in contrast to the prescripts of the law, if you look at the general practice of the period 2009 up until perhaps the former president resigned, you now know that if you take a principled legal decision, which perhaps it's in conflict with what your boss wanted, chances are you'll be shown the door. So in this instance, we knew with Advocate Ramatlhodi that failure to appoint Mr. Mani in particular was a serious offense.
Was career limiting.
Sorry?
Was career limiting.
Was it?
Was career limiting.
Exactly. Yes, Chairperson, thank you. Yes. But as I said earlier on in my statement, that we had resolved that whichever way, if we are to be in the streets for the right reasons, so be it. And indeed, because we knew that by his own admission, Mr. Mani, to me, that the president wanted him to go to that department to transform the DMR. And we were refusing, and I'm basically including myself as his special advisor. In reality, it's the minister, because I don't have those powers. We knew that our stay at DPSA was going to be short-lived. And indeed, 2 or 3 months or so after that, the president released former Minister Ramatlhodi from his cabinet.
And what happened to you when the former president released former Minister Ramatlhodi? Because I see when he moved him from DMR to DPSA, you moved with him. What happened when he was released there?
Well, what happened to me, as I said, that I always, kept my legal practice. I was determined to go full blast in my practice. I was then requested by former Minister of Tourism, Ms. Toko Xasa, to go and serve him as a special advisor, because as former Minister Ramatlhodi was reshuffled in that massive reshuffle, which also saw former Minister of Tourism, Mr. Derek Hanekom, also suffering the same consequences as former Minister Ramatlhodi, probably because Mr. Hanekom allegedly at an NEC meeting requested the former state president to step down. He was also reshuffled from the Department of Tourism, and his deputy was Ms. Toko Xasa, assumed that position as the minister, and she requested me to come and serve her as a special advisor. I served her up until she was reshuffled by the current president to a new portfolio at Department of Sports. And then I took up a post as Chief Governance Officer at SIU, the position I'm occupying even now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. In your conclusion on page 54 of your statement, paragraph 16, you then state that SA, which I assume to be South Africa, is that correct?
Which is my last paragraph.
Yes.
Remember, that was amended, that paragraph.
Yes.
Paragraph 16, which you amended.
Yes.
You speak of the country having lost a professional cabinet minister. Can you briefly expand on that?
Chairperson, I say so because former Minister Ramatlhodi was the first premier of Limpopo province. He was tasked with resolving a very difficult problem, amalgamating almost 3 different ethnic groupings, tribes. There were Venda people, Watsonga people, and Bapedi people. And during his 10-year term as premier of Limpopo, that province was the most stable province, which showed his good leadership in running that province. When I joined him at DCS, he basically showed that he understood what an executive role executives have to play, and that is of non-interference in the running of the administration, but exercising oversight over the administration. And Advocate Ramatlhodi has been consistent throughout the period that I've worked with him here in national government. So much that even as wherever we left, officials, majority of them, Chairperson, literally cried.
Basically, you are saying that wherever he has been deployed, he has made his mark.
He has made his mark, and basically following the rule book and not doing anything else outside the rule book. And if we were to have people like former Minister Ramatlhodi, not that one is saying anything about others, but him in particular, because I've worked with him, I'm sure we can deliver much more for our people.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Unless there are any other further questions from the Chair,
You are done.
do not have. I must, however, point out to the Chair that due to the similar reasons pointed out by my colleague, Advocate Buthelezi,
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing you. Maybe you're speaking too close to the mic.
I apologize, Chair. Is that better?
Maybe move back from the mic a little bit. Yeah, just speak then.
Thank you, Chair. Due to the reasons that were earlier stated by Advocate Buthelezi, I cannot close Advocate Mope's evidence, as Dr. Ngubane and Mr. Duduzane Zuma have reserved their rights to possibly bring applications to the Chair.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, all right. Advocate Mofe, we are grateful that you came to give evidence in the commission. because you may come back
Yes.
in case of need, or if there are parties that get granted leave to cross-examine you. And you will be contacted if that happens. But you have also touched on the issue of current and former directors general, and you have been working within government service for a long time, and were attached to at least maybe 2 or 3 or even more ministers, including ministers where you were special advisor to them. And from what I have heard about the role and position of a special advisor to a minister, it seems that he or she would have a lot of interaction with the DG of the particular department. And you have told us that in your view, if more and more DGs, current and past, were to come to this commission and share what they know, this commission would benefit quite a lot. And when that is said by somebody who has worked with DGs, it should carry quite some weight, because you would have talked to some of them, you would know what maybe some of their frustrations were about things. And I just want, just hope that those DGs and former DGs who haven't made contact with the commission to say, count me in, I will come and share with the commission and the nation what happened when I was DG, what I know, in order to make my contribution to making this country a better country. Those who have not done so, I hope that they will do so. I have said before that when I make this call, I don't make it because we can't force people to come here. But we really would like people, out of their own sense of duty to the country, to come forward and share with the Commission and the nation what was happening in their own departments that's relevant to what we are investigating, because they are not doing the country, they're not serving the country well by keeping away from the Commission when they have evidence, information, and knowledge of important activities and matters that fall within our terms of reference. I know, as you have said, that maybe with some of them they may be scared about how maybe coming forward and revealing certain things might affect them. But talking about those who are current DGs, I have no doubt that they should not have any basis to think that their jobs would be in danger if they were to come and reveal what has happened in the past in their departments that is relevant to what we are investigating. But even those relating to the past, they do have to think about whether, when all this process has finished, they want to be counted among those who made no contribution when they could have made a contribution to ensuring that the country knows how state capture happened, who was involved in it, what was happening, what frustrations, if any, they met, they went through themselves. So I hope that they, wherever they are listening. When we have finished here, there will be those South Africans who will be proud that if, as a result of this commission, something better comes out for the country, they will know that they made a contribution. And then there will be those who will know that when they could have made a contribution, they stood away and did not want to help their country. I thank you very much for coming forward.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You are excused.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. Do we have one witness tomorrow, Mr. Pretorius?
Correct, yes. Ms. Carolus.
Yes. I know that you people are reluctant to give me estimates now, but what's your estimate of how long she might take?
I have no idea. I haven't consulted with
does somebody know?
the legal team person leading her. One day, I'm told.
Oh, I was assuming that she would take one day, but I was hoping that maybe it might be not the whole day.
Well,
you don't know, and
I don't know, Chair.
And I think Ms. Buthelez is not confident to give any estimate.
Well,
as
we hope it's less than a day.
Yeah.
But we can't say. We also have an application for condonation.
Yeah.
But as it appears to be unopposed, it won't take long.
Okay, which we'll deal with tomorrow, huh?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. We will adjourn and then resume tomorrow at 10. We adjourn.
All right, well, there you have it. That's the end of today's proceedings at the State Capture Inquiry. Wow, revelations today, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been quite a day. And, you know, if social media is any gauge as to how engaged people were, some of the top trends today, Ramatlodi right at the top, the Guptas and Moufe, who's just testified now. Some really explosive testimonies to borrow some of the expressions that they were saying during the course of it. And the one that stood out for me, honestly, is in his testimony, Minister Ramatlodi accused former President Jacob Zuma of auction